Hi there, welcome. I'm Anders Ahlberg. I'm the Road Product Marketing Manager here at Trek Bikes, and a new bike is always the culmination of years of hard work from dozens of experts in their field. Today we're going to hear from some of those experts about this new bike, and I'm really excited that we could have so many people together to really share what we've been working on. If you haven't already guessed, today we're here to talk about Émonda. And historically, Émonda has always been our lightest weight road bike. It's the simplest distillation of everything we think a road bike should be, and it's ultralight. And that ultralight really means that it takes a lot of effort on our part to get it to be as amazing as it is. So we're gonna hear from some of those experts on how we got there and what we made. But first, we're gonna start with a little bit of history. Some history from Hans Ekholm, our industrial design manager, and he's gonna walk us through the first and second generation of Émonda to really give us some backstory on what makes the Émonda what it is today. All right, I'm really excited. We have Hans Ekholm here in studio. He is our industrial design manager for road bikes, and he's been with the company for over 16 years. Really knows a lot about our history, and he's here to give us a little history on the Émonda, how we made these awesome bikes and where that sets us up for the future of Émonda.
Sounds good.
Cool, so we've got this first generation Émonda here. You know, our goal was to make that sub 10-pound bike. Can you speak a little more about what we were trying to do with Émonda?
Yeah, so that goal was a driving force for that project. You know, a rideable, really quality bike, not just held together with some
down tube shifters,
some tapes and stuff. Yeah, we knew we had to push the boundaries on how we developed the product as well. So introducing some new tools to our process, really paying attention to every detail mattered. So we couldn't skimp on anything.
Can you talk me through some things on the frame that maybe a layperson wouldn't necessarily see that were done in order of that, you know, that relentless pursuit of a super light frame?
Right. So there's a lot of different levers we can pull. You can reduce the amount of material that you use. That's one way to do it. You can increase the stiffness of the materials that you're using. You can change the shape of the tubes, and we used all those. Every tube on here was really analyzed down to, you know, cross-sectional things, as well as studying how the laminate would work.
You mentioned ride quality with vertical compliance, but also in terms of ride testing, I know we did a lot of work on this bike to make it actually ride the way we wanted it to. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so ride quality is one of those levers that we played with. So every tube shape has a testing number that's associated with it. So as we are twisting this frame in the computer, we're able to predict how it's going to ride.
Yeah, I know. I was one of the ride testers on this project, and you know, we had been riding these over a year out from launch to really fine-tune that stuff. Mm-hmm. Were you involved with any of the discussions with the team on having them test this and have them kind of prove out that this was a great bike?
Having our own team is a huge benefit. We like to use them in a couple different places in our process right away when we're thinking about a project. Mm-hmm. We interview them, we talk to them about what they hate about the current project or what they want to improve.
So obviously, you know, huge success. We had a 10.25 pound complete bike, really well regarded frame in terms of ride quality, handling. How did we start focusing on the development of the second generation bike?
That's a cool question that people like my mom would ask. You just made the best bike ever. How are you going to make it better? So that's something that we ask ourselves, you know, what's next? I think a lot of it comes down to dissatisfaction. There's always, you know, something that we wished we could have done. We didn't have the materials available yet, or we didn't have the technology to analyze it the way we wanted to analyze it. It's hard to leave your baby behind, but if you know that you can do better, we just keep doing that. So we're always trying to up ourselves, and that's where the next generation came to be.
So what specifically were we looking at when we were making that leap from first generation to second generation? What were those dissatisfactions?
We had to make it light, make it work with disc brakes. We had to employ some new tools. We have software that can allow us to input all those variables, and it'll calculate hundreds of different options and find the right combination of stiffness, less material, comfort, whatever the attribute that we're after.
So you're saying you didn't do anything on the new bike, it was all computers?
Typed in a couple numbers and then science. Nope, still a full team. We just had another tool to help us out. So we still have to make decisions about which one of those iterations is important.
What specifically were some of the features on this bike that came out of that research and development?
If you look at the head tube on that bike compared to this one, this area has actually gotten wider on this version.
This bike here.
You wouldn't expect making something bigger is going to make it lighter, but it does make it stiffer. And the way we were applying the materials, we're actually able to make the whole bike stiffer. Subtle changes like that made big differences. You also see on the top and bottom of the top tube in this model are concave. That helps with the structure of the seat mast and to be able to carry the steering all the way through the top tube into the seat stays and keep that part of the bike anchored. Pretty subtle stuff, but when you're talking about the amount of optimization that went into this bike, going beyond that, it takes 90% of the time to do the last 5% or 2%, and that's kind of where we were in this bike.
Right. And so obviously, going to a disc frame and being at 665 grams versus a 690 gram rim brake frame, that was a lot of weight that we had managed to pull out of that.
Yeah, pretty incredible.
So in your time researching and talking to those riders, what are people dissatisfied about? What's next?
Pro racers know about aerodynamics, so we still have cables exposed on this bike, which most of our other bikes in our line are hidden. And you can already see we have some wheels on here. They have some optimization for aero. Aerodynamics is part of our dissatisfaction.
Well, thanks, Hans. Really appreciate the history lesson on the first and second gen Émondas here. Really important, I think, to know where we're coming from, to maybe get a glimpse of where we're going. And with that, we're going to turn to Matt Schreiber, who's our technical director for Trek-Segafredo, our men's and women's pro teams stationed in Europe. And he'll give us a little insight into what the team's needs are for an ultra lightweight climbing bike. And we'll see what he has to say. So I wanted to kind of start with you, given that this new Émonda really is built around a request from the team, and maybe you could talk a little bit about the current Émonda, and what purpose that serves for the team, and why the team made this request to make a new bike.
Sure. Yeah. So really, the team loves having the option to race. Any platform that we make. So whether it's the Émonda, the Domani, or the Madone. But what we found is the current Émonda is an awesome lightweight race bike. Goes uphill, handles extremely well, but there was just a big gap in aerodynamics between the Émonda, the current Émonda, and the Madone. And so with the new Émonda, having closed that gap, but on aerodynamics to the Madone, basically making it extremely fast, but not at a weight penalty. So we still have a bike that's 6.8 kilograms, and we still have the awesome ride characteristics of an Émonda. That's really what the team was pushing for when we were looking at developing a new Émonda, is making it, don't lose the ride characteristics, the awesome geometry, that snappy feeling, and make sure that we can always be at 6.8 kilograms, no matter what size. So from a 50 up to a 60 with the team, I need to be able to be at 6.8 kilograms. So awesome. That's really how we got there from the team. That's what they've been asking for.
Great. And so obviously, you and I, those of us who interact with analysis experts and aerodynamicists, know that aerodynamics is super important. But from the team, we know that weight is really critical. Why is that 6.8 kilogram limit so important for a team rider?
Weight's just something that you can always feel. And what keeps coming up in all the conversations that we would have was that it's always a certain moment in the race where weight really matters. So it's a power to weight situation where they need to make a move. They need to make sure that they're in the break on the climb, or that's where they're going to win the race. And so that's why weight was more of a focus for the elite athletes. That said, we do still know that there's a huge aerodynamic benefit as well. So, although they tend to focus a lot on the weight, we're also giving them a bike that's super aero, so that yeah, they have the whole package, right? So now they have a bike that's 6.8, but it's extremely aerodynamic as well. So
Yeah, no, I think they get to have their cake and eat it too, is what it sounds like.
yeah, pretty much, exactly.
Cool, great. And then so how are we going to see the ridership of Madone versus Émonda shift as riders get this new bike?
Yeah, I mean, it's a new toy, so it's going to be super popular among the team, and they've seen it for a while. They've tested it. They've been a part of that whole process to get us to where we are now, to where we're ready to launch. And I get emails every day. Hey, when do we get the new bike? When can we start racing it? And so I've anticipated that we'll see. I would say 7 out of 10 race days they'll be on the new Émonda. Yep. So
Wow.
it's
Cool.
going to be very popular, and especially among the women. The women are currently primarily riding the Émonda, but having a bike that's still 6.8 kilos and aerodynamic for the women. They tend to choose it for just for the weight and the ride characteristics. Most of them are smaller riders, and they like a bike that's just a little bit lighter for them. So,
Great. Awesome. Yeah, I can tell the team is excited. I've even been getting some messages from them of like, hey, when can I get the new bike? I'm like, talk to Shriver. He knows. So
Yep.
I can tell they're excited. So thanks for taking the time to talk to us. Really appreciate it.
Sure. Yep. We're excited too. And thanks for making sweet bikes for us.
So now the moment you've all been waiting for. I've got a brand new Émonda with me here in the studio, and this is a gorgeous Project One Émonda SLR9 that was hand painted just meters that way in our Project One paint booth. The first thing you'll clearly see is that it's aerodynamic. Aerodynamics matter everywhere, not just for on the flats, but climbing as well. So we've really tuned this frame to be the fastest aerodynamic package for a lightweight bike that'll let it climb faster than anything else out there that we know of. Second thing we've done on this bike is we've introduced OCLV 800 carbon fiber. So this is an all-new material and process that lets us build a sub 700 gram aero frame, which is something that we're really, really proud of. So we're going to hear more about that in a minute here. And lastly, this is not just a new frame, this is a whole complete package that's been designed together to make the fastest climbing bike. And that involves some brand new Aeolus 37 wheels and an Aeolus bar stem combo that really round out this package for the lightest and fastest climbing bike we've ever made. So now we're going to turn to our aerodynamicist, John Davis, and he's going to tell us all about the development behind this bike and how we managed to make such a lightweight aeroframe. Okay, so I have our Executive Vice President of Aerodynamics, John Davis here. Not actually a Vice President here at Trek, but he is our aerodynamics guru, and he's been really kind to give us some time to walk us through the kind of the development story and aerodynamic outputs of this Émonda project. Hopefully he can explain some science to us. That's why we have this beaker on set here.
Exactly.
So John, can you tell me a little bit about the Émonda project? What kind of were our goals going into this, and how did that focus our development?
The obvious goal was that we wanted to get more aerodynamic, but we also didn't want to end up just designing another Madone or something really close to the Madone. So we picked a famous climb, Alpe d'Huez, and chose that as our target. We knew if we could be the fastest bike up Alpe d'Huez, we would be the fastest bike up a large number of climbs. And we knew that we would have to improve our aerodynamics to reach that goal, but also not sacrifice too much of the weight.
How do we pick that right balance between making the bike super fast like a Madone, but a little bit heavier, or super light like the old Émonda, but not any faster? How do you find that right balance?
Right. We know if we reduce the weight and if we get faster, we'll be faster up Alpe d'Huez. but that's not necessarily the most efficient way to get there. So before we did any engineering at all on the bike, we decided to create a roadmap about what's the most efficient way to be faster up Alpe d'Huez. And the way to do that was to get our current bike, calculate the time up Alpe d'Huez. And then what happens if we add 500 grams of weight to the bike in order to reduce the drag by 100 grams? And we did that trade-off for every single point on this roadmap, plus or minus 1 kilogram of weight and plus or minus 30% in aero. And so what you get on that map is a set of contours that's really similar to the contours, elevation contours on a map. You want to see the fastest way to climb up a mountain, you go in the direction that the contours are closest together. And so you do the same thing on our roadmap, where the contours are the time up Alpe d'Huez. So we see where we are currently, and then we see if we reduce about 3 times the drag for every unit of weight, that's the fastest way to get faster up Alpe d'Huez. Every time we create a new prototype or have a new wind tunnel test or run any CFD at all, we can track our progress on that map to be faster.
So we've identified that balance. We know, how much faster and how much lighter we want to make the bike. How do you then start designing that?
We didn't want to just make a small change from the old Émonda. So we had a clean sheet design. We tried everything that we thought might work. Lots of different concepts that we narrowed down looking at aerodynamics and structures. Once we narrowed that down a little bit, we got our initial concept and entered the detailed design phase of the project, which was where I did a lot of detailed CFD, computational fluid dynamics, on that initial design, and kind of ran through the flow visualization with a comb to see where the areas of opportunity are. Where do we put the highlight lines? How deep do we have the tubes? Things like that. So after that detailed design phase, we've kind of locked down where we are in the geometry, where we have features like highlight lines and how deep tubes are, but the tube shaping themselves, that's really where HEEDS shines, and so that's the final phase of our design process.
And then what is HEEDS?
It's a software that connects all of our different engineering software, so it connects my CFD, it combines that with our structures, it has an optimization algorithm that connects these different analyses and tracks them onto that ideal blend of weight and aero. Instead of me trying to do this manually with our structures team where I say, okay, this design is 10% faster, but the structures team then says it's 100 grams heavier. Well, then they have some recommendations which screw up my aero, and we kind of go back and forth. The optimization software helps track directly onto that most efficient path that we calculated in the roadmap.
Okay, cool. And so is this something that can just run on your laptop at work, or is there a lot more computing power behind this?
So yeah, we have I guess you could say a supercomputer. We also, for really high computationally intensive cases, we will burst to the cloud. So that's what we'll use for things like unsteady aerodynamics. Unsteady aerodynamics is particularly important for a bike like Émonda because you're riding slower. Your riding speed is almost as fast as the gust that's coming in, which creates a limited time disturbance that propagates down. So you have to look at that unsteady aerodynamics, which is kind of an order of magnitude harder to solve computationally.
So are you saying the Émonda is more optimized for climbing aerodynamics? Would you say that?
Right, that's why we focused on unsteady aerodynamics. For something like speed concept, unsteady aerodynamics will be important if you're riding in very heavily gusty conditions, but not as important as if you are on a bike with much shallower tube shapes and when you're going slower with more wind coming at you. All those three things create the recipe for unsteady aerodynamics, and you see all those three things in a climbing scenario. So that's why we really focused on it for Émonda.
Okay, awesome. And can you point out some specific examples of how we actually tweak these tube shapes, both through CFD and HEEDS?
Yeah, so we kind of started from front to back because there's the most area of opportunity in the front before the airflow gets churned up by the legs and all the different turbulence from the tube shapes. We spent a lot of time on the highlight lines and the head tube, making sure those straighten the flow out and were aerodynamic. In particular, the down tube, we spent a lot of time in HEEDS on. It's a really good candidate for optimization. So at the top of the down tube, you've got the rim and tire that are influencing the aerodynamics on the down tube. So that's a different scenario than right here, where you've still got a wheel in front of you, but the rim and the tire, they're further away. So you've got more time for the flow to straighten out at the nose. And then often you'll have a bottle, so we ran with and without a bottle, and that created a slightly different shape in this section of the down tube than this section. And so you see that in a lot of areas on the bike. The other part of the bike that we spent a lot of time on for aerodynamics is the bar stem. And the bar stem has a lot of aerodynamics baked in, but also trying to balance out the ergonomics and the structures, obviously. So we had started with our camtail shape on the tops of the bar, but the camtail shape isn't really that comfortable to grab because you've got kind of a hard edge in the back. So we increased the radius there, but ended up with, I think, a really good shape that blends all three of those. And so it's a really fast bar stem.
Cool. Yeah, I can say, having ridden it, that I find it to be pretty comfortable, and it feels like it struck that balance really well.
Awesome.
So how do you balance, we have this great testing tool of CFD with actual wind tunnel, real world experimentation. How do you balance those two things?
Really the meat of our design process happens in the CFD, partly because you can do rapid designs in there. You can also, though, do whatever you want. We can take our findings from on-road experiments and say, okay, there's this amount of turbulence. We can plug that into the CFD and try things like, okay, this is a slower climb up in the Alps where there's a lot of gusts. You can't necessarily do that in the wind tunnel. We do use the wind tunnel, of course, though, for validation. It's the ultimate authority on, is your bike faster in a steady environment? For the Émonda, we had, I think, 3 wind tunnel tests. So kind of the first one was our first prototype, and then the second one was what we thought would be our final prototype, which ended up being great. And then the third one was our total validation of our production mold and how is the final bike, and checking to make sure it's as good as our second wind tunnel test, which it was.
Awesome. That must feel good when you get that agreement.
Yeah, it's always a little bit nervous before the test happens, but then and then the test itself is a whirlwind of activity. But then, yeah, to see the numbers line up is really great.
Awesome. It means you did your homework right.
Yeah.
And for our friends who don't live in places where it's super hilly and still care about fast aerodynamics, will the Émonda be really good at a high speed as well, aerodynamically?
Yeah, so when you're going fast on the flat, the aerodynamics are almost the entire part of the picture. And so 180 grams is a huge impact there. That is about 18 watts of power and would end up being about 60 seconds per hour faster on the flat.
So we've talked about kind of how we got there, what the changes to this frame are, what's the science and the math we can put behind what we've delivered here.
The new Émonda was about 180 grams faster in the wind tunnel at pretty high speeds. That's going to be about 18 watts. And then in terms of time savings on a flat surface, that's about 60 seconds per hour faster. And then with our Alpe d'Huez target, that was about 18 seconds per hour faster of Alpe d'Huez.
So that's a huge margin for you, especially you consider a racer on Alpe d'Huez finishing 6 seconds behind the leader or 12 seconds in front is huge.
Yeah, seconds definitely matter in that scenario. So
awesome. And so for someone who's not a professional, who's not going to win the tour stage up the Alp, how much aerodynamic savings and impact will they see on this new bike?
Right. So if you think about it, the slower you ride, the more opportunity you have for aerodynamic improvements. The other thing that helps with this bike in particular is that it is a climbing bike. It is optimized for speeds that aren't necessarily that 45K. And so a climbing bike is nice for that regime of aerodynamics.
Awesome. So you're saying this is faster for pros, but maybe fastest for the average person?
Right. I mean, I ride an Émonda, so this will be fastest for someone like me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are you getting a new bike?
Yeah. Can you hook me up?
See what we can do.
Okay.
Thanks for that awesome overview of the development, and congratulations on really some huge success here. I mean, 180 grams of aerodynamic benefit saved is massive, and putting that in perspective of a minute per hour on the flats is really remarkable. So nice job there.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to turn to Jordan Rusing. He's our product manager for Road, and he's going to be telling us all about OCLV 800, the new miracle carbon fiber from Trek. It's really a huge leap forward for us. And that's really important because, you know, we made all these aerodynamic improvements, but we needed to keep the weight down, as John mentioned. And so OCLV 800 is our key to doing that. And Jordan's going to tell us all about that. All right, so we've got Jordan Rusing here in the studio. He is Trek's Director of Road Products, so he's really responsible for all of our road bikes. And we thought we'd bring him in as the expert on all things technical for Émonda. And we want to talk to him about OCLV 800, that all-new carbon fiber material we have in this new Émonda. So, Jordan, first, thanks for coming by. So you're the Director of Road Products here, and you've been with Trek for, what, 12 years now?
Yeah. My degree's in mechanical engineering, and I started as a wheel engineer and then transitioned into a role with our professional team, so as a team liaison. Did that for about 3 years and then came back to the office here and then came to the role that I'm in today, managing the road bike business.
Yeah. So you're obviously responsible for all of our road products, but the Émonda specifically must be exciting to see this out here really getting introduced to the greater world today.
Yeah, it's something that's been a long time coming. We spent a long time on it, and we're super excited with how it came out.
We just heard from our aerodynamicist about how we've kind of shaped all these tubes to make it as fast as possible as a climbing bike. But obviously weight is really important, and OCLV 800 is how we got this bike as light as it is. Can you tell us about the development and how we really approached the need for a new carbon fiber and what OCLV 800 is?
So the new Émonda is really all about balance, balancing weight and aerodynamics. And so when we went through that aerodynamic investigation, we discovered that as you add aerodynamics into the mix, the frame shapes become structurally somewhat less efficient. And so that means that the bike, in order for it to maintain the same strength and stiffness, would have to add weight. And so we sort of set a rallying cry of 700 grams for the frame that we wanted to stay under in this development process. We really needed a new material in order for us to be able to hit that target that OCLV 700 wasn't going to be able to hit our frame weight targets. And so we had to go out and try to understand if there's new materials, new processes available to us that we could leverage to hit our goal.
Obviously, we're not using one material through the whole bike. We use different carbon fibers in different applications. Can you tell me about a little bit some of the properties of different carbon fibers and why we would choose them?
Yeah, so within a carbon frame, there are a bunch of different fiber types as well as a bunch of different pieces of laminate that we use throughout the entire frame. And so what we're really looking at doing is understanding what the behavior of the frame needs to be in specific areas. So in order for a bike to be really responsive, then we really look to a stiffness value. Obviously at Trek we go through a lot of rigorous tests on our frames, and so for that we're really looking at strength of certain areas, and we have to figure out how to balance those two things. So get a bike that's really responsive but yet still pass all our testing at the super low weight, and obviously that's a very difficult balance to make because generally those two things are sort of inverse. If a material is stiffer, it's not going to be quite as strong for or able to absorb energy. If something's really good at absorbing energy or really strong, then typically it's not quite as stiff. With OCLV 800, the property that we really benefited from was strength. So we were able to hit our stiffness targets still at below our weight target, but then the frames weren't going to be able to pass our testing essentially. So we didn't have any limitations on the stiffness front. Where we really had limitations was on the strength front. And so OCLV 800 from a fiber type perspective is 30% stronger than the previous material that we'd been using in OCLV 700. It was what enabled us to still pass all of our testing and hit that weight goal and still provide the stiffness that we wanted. And so we leveraged it in specific areas of the frame where it benefited most from that property of having improved strength, but we were able to save a significant amount of weight versus if we were just using OCLV 700.
Great, and how much weight does that save over OCLV 700?
If we were to take same stiffness targets, obviously passing all of our tests in the same frame shape, we'd be looking at about 760 grams. So we're looking at about a 60 gram, a little over 60 gram total savings by leveraging this new material, which is massive.
Wow. That's what, like 8% of the total frame weight?
Yeah, which
so that's huge.
In things that are very optimized, where we're really looking at sort of incremental gains, 8% is a huge number.
Yeah, wow. So obviously having something that's 30% stronger sounds like a huge home run. Was that really easy to just say, oh, we're going to make this area stronger, put the fiber in there, and the frame's great to go, or did it take a little longer to actually dial that in?
It takes a long time to understand how to properly use those materials. So anytime we have a new fiber type, we have to go through a bunch of different tests and understanding where on the frame it most benefits from that, and how specifically to use it. So I think overall it was about a 2-year development cycle once we first got access to this new fiber type. And began leveraging it in something like 250 frames in development. So just breaking frames over and over and over and gaining the most benefit out of that new fiber.
You talked about getting access to this material. Is this something that other cycling companies have access to and can use in their frames, if they even were able to do that 2 years of development?
No, so this is a material that is proprietary to Trek. It's very expensive. It's a very, very high performance fiber. We're the first application in the bike industry to be using this.
With Hans, we talked about using the team as ride testers. Can you talk a little bit about how we use the team in the development of this laminate?
Obviously, they're one of the most extreme users of our bikes, and so the stiffness and the weight are the things that they generally look for. They want the bike to be very responsive. They put out more power than almost anybody in the world. And then they're very, very focused on minimizing the weight of the bike. As a complete system, one of probably the bikes that the team has been most excited about within the last 10 years from Trek, just because it hits all of the things that they're looking for.
Did we put different versions out there for the team to try to hone in on that perfect balance?
Yeah, we have a pretty regimented process for how we leverage the team from a ride testing and development perspective, and so we leverage them throughout the development process, but the last step really within that is that we take the existing frame shapes that we have, but with different laminates that offer different stiffnesses, and they're completely blind to the differences of those bikes. They go and ride test them in a really controlled environment. And they come back and they provide us with their preference of which bike they like the most. They're able to really pick apart the differences of the bikes and provide the one that they feel is the best balance of all the things, of responsiveness, of handling, of compliance, all those things. So the bike that the team rides is identical to the bike that we offer for sale.
Well, and so this laminate is the one the team chose?
That is exactly the bike that the team chose and will be riding very shortly here.
All right, so one of the most striking things you first notice about this bike is the bar stem. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so that's the Bontrager Aeolus bar stem system, and it's a new bar stem system that was co-developed with the rest of the bike. It was really developed with the same mentality as balancing weight and aerodynamics, and it integrates it into a one-piece design, which saves a ton of weight versus if it's a two-piece design. One of the things beyond just weight and aerodynamics that we focused on was serviceability. So we do realize that more integration of cables within a frame does make it harder to change bar and stem systems. And so we really focused on trying to find great solutions for that problem. So what you see on the Aeolus system is that there's a groove that goes underneath the handlebar and then a small clamp underneath the stem. And what that allows us to do is route all of the cables and hydraulic hoses on the outside of the bar. So if you wanted to change the bar and stem system, all you have to do is take the bar tape off, slide the shifters off, and you don't have to reroute any cables, you don't have to re-bleed any hoses. Just super simple to manage.
Great. So next, I want to move on to the bottom bracket. Obviously, the industry has been really interested in new bottom bracket standards, and I want to talk about why we chose T47 for the new Émonda and what advantages it brings.
Sure. T47 was first adopted on Trek bikes last year with the Monty SL and SLR, and when we went out selecting a new bottom bracket standard for our bikes, we really sort of focused on four main attributes. The first was that we just really didn't want to reinvent a brand new standard. We wanted to look to other standards that were open to the rest of the industry and pick one that really sort of suited all the targets that we were looking for. The second was serviceability. Press fit systems, just from a pure service perspective, aren't the best. We wanted a tooled, threaded interface so that you could easily take a bottom bracket in and out. Compatibility was another big thing. There's been a lot more crank systems out on the market now that use 30mm spindles. BB90, which is our previous system, wasn't compatible with 30mm spindle systems. And then the last is that we really sort of have a design philosophy behind Trek frames that we've been using since the invention of BB90 systems. And what BB90 allowed us to do in the past was create a really wide down tube stance width. A wider down tube provides more bottom bracket stiffness, creates a more responsive frame on the whole. T47 allows us to be able to maintain that same down tube and bottom bracket stance width, which provides us with still that responsiveness that you've come to expect from Trek bikes. So you'll expect to see T47 across more and more of the Trek road portfolio in the years to come.
So you're telling me that T47 means that our complete bike weight can be lower, that it's more serviceable and more reliable?
That's true.
Okay, that sounds great. Moving on then, we've got a new fit to the Émonda, something that we've seen before with Madone, the H1.5 fit. Can you tell us why we put that on this bike?
H1.5 is really sort of evolving into what we're calling a race fit. We call it H1.5 for simplicity because it's exactly halfway in between H1 and H2, which were our two previous fits that we offered on Émonda and Madone. H1.5 we feel is the best balance of it, provides a really aggressive aerodynamic fit, so for riders, including our team, that want to be able to get really low. But it's also a little bit more attainable than what H1 had been previously, so for regular riders, myself included, that don't get quite as aggressive, it's still a little bit higher than H1, and so we felt it was sort of that perfect balance of providing the rider the right fit on a race bike.
So you mentioned the team. Obviously we have a men's team and a women's team. Can you speak specifically to how H1.5 works for riders of different genders?
H1.5 works for any rider who's looking for an aggressive fit on a race bike. And so we've found that independent of frame size, independent of gender, H1.5 fits all of our riders well for the intended use of this bike. So this bike is a race bike. It's designed for climbing, descending, and H1.5 we feel is really the best balance for everybody who's planning on using this bike.
Great. So can we expect to see any women's models for the new Émonda?
We're considering all of our models gender neutral models, so all of our bikes are for everybody. We do some specific spec changes for smaller frame sizes for smaller riders, so if you look on a 52 or smaller framed bike, we have shorter reach handlebars, we have different saddle specs on those bikes, different crank specs on those bikes to sort of follow what we believe is the best fit balance for any of the riders who are going to be probably purchasing those bikes. But all of our bikes are for all of our riders, and we really feel like that's the best solution to provide the most choice for everybody.
So really everyone wins.
Everyone wins.
Great. All right, so we've just heard about why the new Émonda and its H1.5 fit is such a great match for all different types of riders. We've also heard about why the team feels like the new Émonda is going to be a great choice for the upcoming race season. So with that, we're going to turn to Lizzie Deignan, who's going to tell us all about this new bike and her relationship with it. All right. Hi, Lizzie. Thanks for joining us today. So glad you could take time out of your probably busy family and training schedule right now. So how are things going at home?
Yeah, routine hasn't really changed, to be honest. Being a professional bike rider is pretty boring when you're not racing. So yeah, life's kind of the simple routine, training and looking after my daughter, but we're all good. Thank you.
Good. That's good to hear. So obviously we're here to talk about the All New Émonda, and wanted to give some insight into your first ride on the bike and kind of how you're feeling about that. Can you tell us about the first time you rode the new Émonda and what you felt?
Yeah, so the first time I rode the new Émonda was actually at a photo shoot, and it was a sunrise photo shoot, so it was early morning, and you feel pretty groggy at that time, but within sort of 5 pedal revs of riding the bike, I was just amazed at how good it was. It didn't feel like 5 o'clock in the morning anymore. I felt excited, and I wanted to just attack on it. Honestly, it's such a fast bike, an aggressive bike, and it's a bike that you want to race on, definitely.
Awesome. So aside from the feeling of like getting out of the saddle, wanting to go, did you feel that aerodynamic advantage when you started descending and started going a little faster?
Yeah, I think the bike is a real all-round bike. It feels like a racer bike because it feels like in any situation I'd have an advantage on that bike. Sometimes, if you're on a lightweight bike or a cobbled bike, or there's some kind of compromise, but I feel like there isn't with the new Émonda. I don't feel like there's been a compromise in any direction. It's just an all-round fast, aggressive bike.
Great. So I guess my next question was going to be what the ideal race course was, but it sounds like maybe everything. You feel like that's the case?
Yeah, I dream of racing it in Flanders, just because like Flanders has everything. It has the cobbles, steep climbs, descents. You need a really all-round bike, and I think it lends itself to being raced, and I would just love to be able to race that bike in Flanders.
Great, awesome. Can't wait for it. Well, thanks for taking time out of your day, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Okay, cheers.
All right, so a really big thanks to Lizzie for taking time out of her busy training schedule to talk to us about the All New Émonda. And now we have Claude Dreyfel here. He is a design engineer for Bontrager Wheelworks and was integral in the development of these all-new Aeolus RSL 37 wheels. So these wheels we've been talking about as part of the complete Émonda package. Know that they're 1,325 grams for the set, which is 55 grams lighter than the previous Aeolus XXX2 wheels, but they're also 30% deeper. How did we pull that off?
When we set off to develop the wheels, we basically had the same goals as you guys had developing the bike frame. So we started by reviewing the laminate and making some updates there from what we've learned over the years. This was the first time we also have done sort of disc only, so we could take some weight out with that. The second piece was we're using the new DT Swiss hubs. These actually add a little bit of bracing angle to increase stiffness, so we could take some weight out of the rim and keep the same wheel stiffness. And the third piece is the hubs are just a little bit lighter on their own as well.
So what's the ultimate payoff in terms of speed to the rider with these wheels? How much faster are they?
Yeah, so our goal with this was to, like I said, match the wheel set weight as XXX2. We actually did a little bit better than that, and then make them as fast as possible. So we did optimization similar to what we did on XXX product. And also with the new hubs, which are a little bit more aero, we gained 17% versus the XXX2. And we're pretty close to matching the speed of the XXX4.
Wow, that's really impressive for a wheel so shallow. So we've got this awesome performing wheel that's 17% faster than a XXX2 and even lighter. I've also heard we've got these Aeolus Pro 37s. Can you tell me what the difference between those two wheels are?
Yeah, in the past for Aeolus Pro, we've sort of used the last generation shapes. And this time we decided to bring the newest, best shape to that wheel set and then reduce cost by sort of making a simpler laminate, making it a little bit easier to manufacture, and also go one level lower in the hub. They'll still have the DT Swiss Star Ratchet hubs, but it's a spec lower.
Okay, so it sounds like we have a really great package on the Aeolus Pro 37, but we have an even more affordable wheel, the Aeolus Elite 35 and 50. Can you tell me about those wheels?
Yeah, so at Aeolus Elite, we've kept the sort of proven shapes from the Aeolus 35 and 50 that we've been using for a while. And also, over the years, we've been able to kind of increase efficiencies in the manufacturing, which helps bring down costs.
Okay, so that sounds like a great family of wheels. Why should someone really be excited to put Bontrager wheels on their bike?
Yeah, I think there's two main reasons for that. The first is we do a ton of testing. We've developed our own internal tests, and also we do all the industry standard testing. But we spend a lot of time and money validating any new wheel we do. Along with that, we work with manufacturers that have the very best technology and really make sure they have good quality control. The second piece is we back up basically that quality. We warranty them for life. That's for any sort of manufacturing defect. And then also there's a 2-year guarantee where if you crash, we'll replace it.
All right, well, thanks for coming in and explaining the development of these wheels to us. Really excited to get out and ride on these soon. They definitely pair really well with this bike. So next we're going to bring Jordan back on set in the studio here, and we're going to talk about Project One and all the amazing ways you can customize the All New Émonda. Great, so we real quick swapped out to this all new Project One icon Émonda here in studio. Can you tell me what's new with Project One for Émonda?
Yeah, we have a few things going on in Project One. First off, there's 3 new icon bikes, so we'll talk about those in a sec. There's also a new signature series called KOM that allows you to design your own bike and choose your own colors. And then obviously we also have some new components being offered, the new Aeolus family of wheels as well as the Aeolus bar stem system.
So what are those 3 new icon schemes?
So the 3 new icon schemes are Sweet Gold Leaf, Amplified Alchemy, and Holographic Diamond Flake.
This Sweet Gold Leaf looks amazing. Can you tell me more about it?
So Sweet Gold Leaf uses real gold. It's actually 22 karat gold in the down tube logo as well as the gold flake that's embedded within the frame. All of that is over top an amazing black marbled finish.
Wow, that really does look amazing. We've looked at some of the great new visuals that are available on Project One. Can you tell me why an SLR rider should be choosing a custom bike through Project One?
I mean, Project One really allows you to make the bike for you. It allows you to customize both the fit of the bike, so stem length, bar width, crank length, those things. It allows you to choose your own colors, so whether you want an amazing looking icon bike or designing your own bike, we have a palette of 49 different colors available for the signature themes. And then it's just choosing your own specs, so you can choose whatever group set you want from SRAM or Shimano, as well as choosing your different wheel depths and tire selection. So there's a lot of customization that's available to any SLR consumer, and it really allows you to be able to build the bike exactly the way that you want it.
That all sounds great, but what if I want something that I can't get through Project One?
Well, you can still get it. It's what we call Project One Ultimate. And what Project One Ultimate allows you to be able to do is design the bike just for you. It allows you dedicated time with one of our graphic designers, and that allows you to be able to custom design icons, choose colors that aren't potentially within our palette, and really custom design the bike with no holds barred. Wow. It also allows you to be able to choose any spec you want, so any spec that's even not within our program regularly. So it allows you to be able to customize the bike really in an ultimate fashion, any spec, any color, with custom graphics throughout, and that's what we call Project One Ultimate.
Great, that sounds amazing. But is there anything more accessible in the Émonda family?
Yeah, well, we're actually also introducing a brand new family of Émonda SL bikes.
All right, so after a real quick bike swap, we're back here with what I'm told is an Émonda SL, but this thing looks just like an SLR. What's going on here?
Yeah, it is actually an Émonda SL, but the reason it looks like an SLR is that they are identical from a frame shape perspective. So the Émonda SL features the same H1.5 geometry, as well as all the same frame shapes as the SLR. The only real difference is in the composite itself. The Émonda SL uses OCLV 500 instead of the brand new OCLV 800, and so the frame weighs a little bit more, but otherwise gets you the same great ride, same great aerodynamic benefits of the SLR bike.
Wow, that's amazing. So what else is different between SL and SLR?
Again, the frames are pretty much identical other than the composite. There is some spec differences though. The Émonda SL comes with traditional bar and stem systems, so this particular model comes with a Pro bar, carbon bar, and Pro stem. But otherwise, the differences are primarily spec and weight.
Can you tell me more about the family of Émonda SL models?
Sure, there's a huge assortment of different models within the Émonda SL family. It starts with the Émonda SL5, which features a full 105 drivetrain. Then you go to an Émonda SL6 with alloy paradigm wheels on it and a full Ultegra mechanical drivetrain. There's the SL6 Pro, which has the brand new Aeolus Elite 35 wheels and an Ultegra mechanical group set. And then you're upgrading into the electronic drivetrain. So there's two versions of the Émonda SL7, one which features Ultegra Di2 and Aeolus Pro 37 wheels. And this particular version, which is the SL7 E-Tap, this bike is especially cool because it comes featured with a Quark power meter on it. So you get Aeolus Pro 37 wheels, you get full force E-Tap, and you get a Quark power meter, all at an amazing value. It's really the full package.
Yeah, this does seem like a really amazing bike. So that Émonda SL does seem like a really great value for the Émonda rider, but obviously the SLR is the star of our show, so let's get that back out here real quick.